dedicated to e-commerce. We're here to talk about the way you can reach your dreams. And first of all, to be an entrepreneur, it is something that means something to you. It's very often reduced to the fact of launching um, company, but if you look at what it means, it's basically about doing something. It's about undertaking an action that is long and complex. We all do that in our personal lives and professional lives. And if you think about the origin of the word, it is a French word. So we're proud of this. And it's also a word that refers to the 12th century. It's a martial term. And an entrepreneur is somebody who is heroic in during a war, and it reaches us in its modern form as we know it. In 2008, Emmanuel, you had a snowboard accident, and but you could overcome this to become the person that you are. Can you tell us how you transform that uh, very difficult time as an opportunity? Thank you, Mayan, for this introduction. Yes, I had a very traumatic experience when I was about 11. I was planning on going to an engineering school because I loved science. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I, practiced sports as an amateur in my leisure time. I had a life that was rather traditional, considering where I come from. And one day I went skiing with friends, and the last day I decided to go on snowpark and jump over a bump higher than usually. But when I got to the top, I realized that I was too fast and that the bump was very, very high. And I got afraid. I wanted to slow down to stop, and it was too late. So I fell, and suddenly there was a helicopter who basically flew me to the hospital. So it was very confusing because the physicians were not very clear. They didn't want to tell me what was happening to me, and I didn't want to believe in it. I never had a health problem. It couldn't, happen to me. I couldn't be vulnerable. So I thought that in 2 weeks time, 2 weeks later, I would go back to school. But I spent a month at the hospital and 8 months in a re-education center to know how to use a wheelchair. I spent a month in hospital. I had to stay, in bed, and I couldn't do anything by myself. So even grabbing the remote control was impossible. So I lost all autonomy, and it was very difficult at the time. I had to accept this, stage of where I couldn't do anything anymore, and I had to realize that along the different actions that I managed to do again, to take shower, to go outside, to have a true meal that was not a hospital meal. All of those little times were times of happiness, and I thought people forget about those moments of happiness. I want to live my live intensely, and I want every moment to be as strong as when I took, my first shower after a month. Sorry, I'm speaking with a lot of emotion. It's rare that I talk about what happened to me, about my accident, in so many details. So as from that time, I thought I've got to, take action, and I didn't. I wanted to stop just thinking about what had happened to me. And so basically, I graduated from high school in at the hospital, and I, entered preparatory higher education school. And yeah, because not only are you a fantastic sportswoman, but you are an engineer. Yes. So I thought I've got to continue with sports because it counts a lot. I used to be a horse rider and a and I used to practice gym, but I looked for another sport, and I was told about wheelchair tennis, and I thought it was good means to play with members of my family because I thought it was a universal sport. And I went to see a wheelchair tennis match with Stéphane Audet and Michel Jeremias, who had just won the gold medal in Beijing. And I was totally amazed, and I just forgot about their wheelchairs. I was just very impressed with those athletes. So those two aspects, the social aspect, being able to play with anybody, and the performance aspect, I got into tennis, and very rapidly I wanted to be part of to take part in competitions, and very quickly I took part in international tournaments, because there are a few tournaments in France for women, and suddenly I had to, play against people who'd been professionals for 10 years, so it was quite intimidating. But I thought it's incredible to be able to have, an idea of what it means to be a high-level athlete. It's not something I could have experienced if I could still walk. So it opened new doors for me. So when you told us about it, we realize what challenges you had to overcome. But it's difficult to understand how you managed to overcome such fears. And I remember you told me about something your dad told you. Can you tell us about it? Yes. When I had the accident, there were fears of the unknown. I didn't know how people lived in a wheelchair. I didn't know whether I would have to be assisted by somebody all my life, if I could have children, etc. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any disabled people in my, in my family or my friends. So 2 days after the accident, my father came to me and said, "You're lucky because you still have got your head to communicate, and you still are pretty." So I said, "Okay, that's nice, very nice. I can't move. I'm just in pain." But over time, I realized that there were people who had more of a disability than mine, and I thought that it was right that I had to focus on what I still could do, on the new things that my disability brought me, instead of what had been I had lost. So after overcoming this fear of the unknown, I went through different stages. There was the fear of emptiness, but when I realized that I managed to do a number of things, I wondered, what am I going to do with my life? Because there are many questions still. And very quickly I thought, I've got to, set goals, and that's when I started working to, go into an engineering school. I really got involved in tennis, and integrating, the world of tennis. The Handisport Federation told me that I was young, and that I had some potential, and that I could think about, taking part in Paralympics. I didn't know what was high level sports, but I believed them. I thought, well, if they tell me that it's possible, then it is. So I started talking about it. I, practiced more and more, but I had no idea of how difficult it could be. But over years, I put everything in place to access that, to reach that goal that I'd set for myself. So I overcome that fear of emptiness, setting goals for myself, and getting into action. So there's another fear that came up, that is the fear of failure. When I got closer to the games, and I thought, okay, I'm going to play tennis only to be sure that I'm selected for the games. As from then, I thought, but if I fail, it's going to be very difficult for me. One of my biggest goals in life. I can't fail, and that fear, encouraged me to go all the way. I traveled across the world. I didn't have, the necessary quality of game to play. I was exhausted, but I tried to gain points to, move up the classification, but at the very last time I was qualified for the Rio Games. But when I learned about it, I couldn't hold my racket anymore because I'd gone too far. I was too exhausted, so I had to stop for a month and to try and cure. But so when I got to games, I was still a bit injured and I couldn't, defend my chances. It was very difficult for me. I was very unhappy there. It was a shock for me because I had reached my goal, but it wasn't enough. I realized that the journey had gone to reach it had made me sad, and I hadn't had gone through too many steps too quickly, and finally I hadn't got there in good conditions. So that fear of failure, made me go to an extreme. Haven't overcome it, but maybe it's not a fear that I've got. Um, it's a driver also. But well, if it, well, and I've got to think that failure is part of life, and it's the way one progresses. So you were telling us that with these games, you went through different steps too quickly. It's also part of the path as an entrepreneur to accept that there are steps in one's achievement. When did you think, okay, I'm a professional player now, I've reached my goal? I wondered about what is a professional player. It is to try and optimize all of the fields that I may have control over. So to talk again about Rio, where I was unhappy, I decided to stop tennis, and I thought it's not for me. I can't manage pressure. I can't manage my body. So I decided to work for L'Oréal for 2.5 years. But after a few months, obviously, I missed tennis a lot, and I thought, okay, if I want to play tennis full time, what am I going to put in place to feel well and to have a good performance? So I observed the best ones and I questioned myself, and I realized that I could improve in so many fields. I was not professional at all, so I started, practice on a more regular basis. I had a more complete staff with physical, preparatory person, physiotherapists. I worked also with a psychologist to manage pressure during the match. I worked a lot on the knowledge of myself. So all of these aspects, in all of these aspects, I realized that I had a lot of potential for improvement. And now I've been a professional for 2.5 years, and I saw the difference in Tokyo last summer. I was more serene. I played much better on the court. I was different, and that really brought me a lot, that questioning of myself. So if we think about this period again in 4 or 5 years, maybe I will tell you there was this and that that I hadn't improved yet. I was maybe not professional yet at the time, but I feel now an expert in my field, and I know that it was a long process with different stages that I had to learn from my mistakes. It's not something you manage overnight, and it was a long work on myself to get there today. Thank you. We've spoken a lot about inspiration, courage. Those are important qualities to be an entrepreneur. But to be a bit more prosaic, there's something else that is important, that is financing and support. How, when you're not familiar with this world of sport, how do you find sponsors? Well, it is a very important component because in wheelchair tennis, as I was saying before, you've got to travel abroad a lot. You've got to pay, trainers, etc. So a season that's about 40,000 euros. So to win a match is not enough. So you have to find private sponsors to start a career. So when I started having the idea of participating in the games, I was in the central school. I had a network of companies that was quite diverse. I started contacting them, and I thought, I told them, I've got no idea whether I'm going to manage, but would you support me? So I had the audacity to go and talk to them. I, got some rejections, but little by little that went on. And one day I found someone who corresponded to my values and who believed in me and who said, "We've never sponsored an athlete. It was simply market. And we want to try with you, and I'm sure that we're going to gain as much as you will from this partnership." This is how it started, and as from the time the company trusted me, I had results in my career because I could, practice more, participate in more tournaments, and it made my project more legitimate. And other companies followed. So that company, Simply Market, followed me until Rio. Then I worked for L'Oréal, as I said, and L'Oréal, accepted to release me from my employment and sponsor me. So there were meetings, human relationships, human links, and all of that, took place because I presented myself to them and I didn't try to lie. So finally, that's your typical profile that made it possible. You told me about a company that wanted to hire you and that you finally managed to convince to sponsor you. Yes, I met somebody from Air France in an event, and he wanted to hire me. And I went to interviews, but I told them every time I want to play tennis. Maybe we can talk about it again in a few years, but for the time being, maybe you can sponsor me. Otherwise, that's it. I'm going to play tennis. So they accepted to sponsor me, and we'll see whether I ever work for them or not. Thank you. Could you give a piece of advice to somebody who would like to conduct a new project, um, to scale up one's company? What could be your piece of advice? I think the most important is to try to, take action, to take small steps to go towards what you desire. You will see if you reach your first goal, because goals evolve over time. So you've got to launch yourself. There will be failures, as I said before. It's what makes you progress. But until you really launch yourself, nothing is going to happen. So take action. Maybe you can do different things at a time that are not related to one another, and suddenly you become an atypical profile also. Thank you a lot, Emmanuel. Would somebody have a question? I can't see you, so please, speak up if you want to ask a question. I don't know whether it's possible, but bravo, said someone. I can see you better now. No questions? It is a different journey. We wanted to, present to you something different and not talk about e-commerce all day long. You have fantastic values that we share with you. Thanks a lot.